Welcome to Early Research Stories, the podcast that brings you inspiring stories from diverse voices in the world of learning and instruction. Join us as we dive into the latest trends, research breakthroughs, and insights shaping the field today. Hosted by Cris Castro, Rachel Shanks, and Leonie Johan, this is your inside look at the heart of educational research.
Welcome, I am Cris Castro and we are with Roland H. Grabner and Stephan Vogel, current early 2025 conference presidents. Roland Grabner is full professor of talent and learning research at the Department of Psychology, University of Graz, Austria. This university is the venue for the early conference this year. The main research interests of Roland are the neurocognitive basis of individual differences in talent, their interplay with school-related learning processes, and the psychological mechanisms of talent development from aptitude to expertise. A special focus lies in the domain of mathematics. He coordinated the early SIG-22 Neuroscience and Education, and he organized multiple conferences in this research field. Then we also have with us today Stephan Vogel. He has been an associate professor in the Talent and Learning Research Group at the University of Graz since 2020. His research focuses on the neurocognitive development of numerical and arithmetic competencies in children and adults. Stephan has been actively involved with EARLI for over 10 years. As Roland did, Stephan also coordinated the early SIG-22 Neuroscience and Education. Since 2021, he has also been a board member of the International Mind, Brain and Education Society. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really good having you here today. My name is Leonie and we haven't met before, so I'm very excited to getting to know you. And as we've heard from Cris, you have a really vast background. So I think our audience, and the same way as us, we would be very interested in getting to hear a bit more about your academic path. Like if you, Roland, could start with telling us a bit more about the experiences having led to your current role.
Sure. Well, actually, before I studied psychology, I went to a commercial high school because my father had a medium-sized company and wanted me to continue this business. It was a bakery and a restaurant. But from adolescence on, I became more and more interested into people's minds and brains and wanted to become a psychotherapist, like many of the psychology students, actually. So I started studying psychology at the University of Graz. During my master's program, there was a job offer for a student assistant in a research project led by Alyosha Neubauer. And this research project was on the neural efficiency hypothesis, which postulates that more intelligent individuals display a more efficient brain activation compared to less intelligent ones. And I got this job and then dove into the world of EEG research on individual differences in intelligence. And in my master thesis and in a subsequent PhD project, I tried to build a bridge between intelligence research on the one hand and expertise research on the other hand. To this end, I studied professional taxi drivers and tournament chess players. And this line of research on experts actually got me interested into educational psychology. And I was very happy when Elspeth Stern offered me a postdoc position at her chair of research on learning and instruction at the ETH Zurich. And when I was there, I was involved in teacher education, and I've also developed my current research profile on the interplay between individual ability differences and school-related learning, in particular in mathematics. It was also important for me from the beginning to integrate the neurocognitive level of analysis into my research. After my position at the ETH, I moved to the University of Göttingen in Germany, where I was appointed to the professorship of educational psychology. I worked there for 2 years. And finally, in 2014, the University of Graz offered me a position as the first professor of talent research in Austria. And I'm very pleased to be working at this university, which has developed a strong profile in educational research in the recent years, which is also reflected in the university's future education program, which is also embedded in the early 2025.
Before we give the word to Stephan, what did you find out about the chess players and taxi drivers?
Actually, what we found out was that the chess experts compared to novices also had a higher neural efficiency. So neural efficiency is, in fact, not only a function of intelligence, but also of expertise.
Interesting. I think we could fill a whole podcast with that, but we are not going to. So I think we give the word, thank you, Roland, to Stephan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my academic path was probably not very traditional in the beginning, I would say. I worked actually for several years in a broadcasting company, so actually the national broadcasting company here in Austria, as a TV camera operator. And after that, I actually took a year off, also to introspect and reflect a little bit on my future. And I traveled to Asia for almost a year in order to become a diving instructor. And I actually also worked as a diving instructor then in Thailand for more than 5 months. And then diving, meeting a lot of interesting people. And I also used that time to read a lot. Neuroscience, learning, brain plasticity. And I thought, why not study psychology? So I decided to go back to my home university or to my hometown in Innsbruck. Then I started psychology degree there. But I quickly realized that actually not much neuroscience was going on at that time. And I went to courses in medicine and biology, so quite outside of psychology in order to get more information about how neural systems work. And I moved then to Canada to pursue my PhD at the University of Western Ontario, and really focusing then on numerical cognition and arithmetic learning in the context of neuroscience. So trying really then to tackle this question of brain plasticity within an academic setting. And then after finishing my PhD, I started my first postdoctoral position in Germany at the University of Göttingen, actually together with Roland. So this is the time when actually our collaboration started. And I also then decided in 2014 to move together with Roland to Graz. And I was actually quite fortunate to get also sort of a tenure track position here at the University of Graz in becoming an associated professorship. And still working with Roland in the same unit, in the same section. And it has been a pleasure, I think.
Thank you, Stephan. What would you say that your experience as a TV camera operator or diving instructor affects your work today, for example, or your thinking?
Working as a camera operator has a lot to do of how you perceive certain visual aspects of the world. And I think this interaction also fitted nicely to my interests of how the human mind and brain perceives visual components in the world. What about the diving? Yeah, well, maybe more difficult to make sort of direct into academia there, other than that I had definitely several times the feeling, especially during my PhD, why have I ever quitted diving? Should I not go back and become a diving instructor again? This is, so much nicer to some extent. But I think everybody has sort of that struggle during the PhD career where you question yourself.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Rachel Shanks. Nice to meet you both. And I was going to carry on asking you, Stephan, whether you could tell us the role of mentors have had in your academic path.
I would like to highlight 3 people, I guess. So the first one is Leonie Kaufmann. She was my mentor during my master thesis. We did not work at the Psychology Institute, but at the Medical University, and was one of the few people who actually used fMRI in order to work with kids who have learning disabilities. Mm-hmm. It was hugely important then as well for my second mentor, actually to meet my second mentor, Daniel Ansari. I met him via a conference because I was actually presenting some of our research data at that conference. And it was also sort of an accident because actually Leonie Kaufmann was expected to present those data, but she was invited as a keynote speaker for another conference. And she asked me then to step in and to present for her some of the work that we've been doing together. And that's when I met Daniel Ansari then for the first time. And we really had a very fantastic time then during this conference. He shaped me quite a bit in terms of developing my theoretical understanding, my methodological understanding, but also in terms of guiding the questions that are important to address. And then at the end, Roland Grabner, working with him now over 10 years, he was really important also in terms of getting especially the teaching components then back into my academic life. He has sort of a very good hand in terms of leading people to become independent in doing their own things.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And interesting that serendipity that you had to step in at the conference and that led from one mentor to the next.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Stephan. And then Roland, you've maybe got slightly red cheeks then but thinking of your mentors. So you've been praised as a mentor, but I wondered who your mentors are on your academic career.
Yeah, well, actually, first of all, I feel very honored that Stephan sees me in this list of the three important people. And I can only say that I really enjoy working with him. He has been inspiring me all the time during my work. And it is a real pleasure to have him in our team, actually. Well, apart from Stephan, of course, I also had the great fortune and also pleasure to have amazing mentors. As I already said before, during my studies, it was Aljoscha Neubauer, who I worked with in the research project on neural efficiency. And first, I started working there as a student co-worker. Then I did my diploma thesis in this research project, and then also in a subsequent research project, also led by him, my PhD project. Both my diploma and PhD thesis were also co-supervised by Elsbeth Stern. And Aljoscha Neubauer and Elsbeth Stern have been friends for quite a long time, but they had originally quite opposite views on what matters for performance. Aljoscha Neubauer, as intelligence researcher, always claimed it's all about intelligence. And Elsbeth Stern, as an educational psychologist, always claimed it's all about knowledge. Actually, it was kind of my task to find out what is more important. And in fact, Elsbeth was also the person who drew my attention to EARLI.
How has EARLI shaped your careers as an association, as a group of international researchers?
Well, actually, EARLI played a very important role in my career. Before I started my position at the ETH Zurich, I was actually not aware of EARLI. When I started working with Elsbeth, she told me that it is essential to attend the EARLI conferences regularly, as they were the most important ones for our research on learning and instruction. Of course, I started the job, did not dare to disagree, and attended immediately my first EARLI conference in 2007, which was in Budapest. I was absolutely impressed, and so I enjoyed the first conference very much. One of the key moments was also in 2009, when the EARLI funded an advanced study colloquium with the title Cognitive Neuroscience Meets Mathematics Education. And EARLI was also very important for me to extend my research network.
Thank you, Roland. What about you, Stephan?
Yeah, I think very, very similar trajectory. Obviously highlights that it has been tremendously important in terms of setting up networks. One of the things that I can already relate to the things that I have done. So I was actually also a participant at this advanced study colloquium in 2009. So that Cognitive Neuroscience Meets Mathematics Education that Roland attended. And I think it was actually the first time that I actually met Roland there. So I definitely see sort of the EARLI and the SIG22 as my home in that sense. Since I felt sort of this strong connection with the EARLI, I was also then starting to get interested sort of to go beyond that. So that's why I also joined the International Scientific Committee for the JUR 2015 conference. So still as a junior researcher, I helped to organize the JUR in Limassol and in Cyprus.
Thank you. This, really interesting how EARLI actually has shaped your career.
Yeah.
And you mentioned future perspectives, Stephan, and now we have talked quite a lot about neuroscience and education. So we could possibly venture a bit more into general education and research. Maybe you could tell us a bit about what kind of you see as research trends in learning and instruction.
Yeah, right. Not an easy question, obviously.
No.
At my starting point, neuroscience and education was just in the beginning, took a trajectory, and that was also actually fostered and nurtured by EARLI quite a bit. In relationship to critical thinking as sort of a key skill for the 21st century, neuroscience does play an important role, and I think also the topic of critical thinking is a very important key component of these 21st century skills, where we need to know better how critical thinking develops, how it interacts with the environment, and especially how also cognitive biases arise within information processing in general, especially in relationship to this post-factual educational landscape that we are facing, right? So this post-factual landscape has changed also educational settings quite a bit. And I think in this interaction, neuroscience can offer quite a bit as well. in relationship to that already, it opens up already these big questions in terms of digitalization and artificial intelligence. So I think those are sort of key words that I would throw out there that have a huge impact, I think, in general, how education is formed in the future.
Stephan mentioned quite a few areas. Maybe you still have something to add, Roland, or what is your opinion? Do you agree? Do you see other areas?
Well, generally, of course, I agree. Especially in my career, I followed this trend of linking neuroscience and education quite strongly. And as Stephan said, it has become an increasingly hot topic in the first 15 to 20 years of the 21st century. So at the beginning, there were just many theoretical debates on whether this link could work or not. And then the research was kind of exponentially growing, and there were an increasing amount of studies and increasing amount of evidence showing that it makes sense to have this additional level of analysis, that we can gain additional insights into cognitive mechanisms involved in learning, and also that neuroscience can also offer to some extent an increase in the predictive validity of learning trajectories, so that neuroscientific markers could improve the validity of or the prediction of future development and also learning trajectories. And in addition, that also there are neuroscientific methods that can help to foster learning. Beyond that, there are also additional trends, as Stephan said. So critical thinking is an important trend that is also related to conceptual change research, for instance. So there have been many insights into the process of conceptual change, how people change their beliefs, how people change their concepts of different things, and how difficult it is, obviously, also to support that change in education. Currently, the term that digitalization and then artificial intelligence is the hot topic, obviously. And here we are also at our infancy, and we will see how this field will develop and also what the EARLI conference will bring.
Thank you. Stephan, do you have any publication you want to share with your audience today, and why?
Obviously, it's hard to choose a publication, but maybe I would like to highlight two key contributions of mine. So the first one is a review paper that I co-authored with Bert Desmet. And that one is published in NPJ Science of Learning. In that article, we present sort of our current knowledge in terms of neurocognitive science and the development of numerical and arithmetic abilities. The second one is actually also something very special that I really enjoyed doing. It's an article collection that was actually done by the SIG22 and the coordinators of Nienke van Attenveld, Sabine Peters, Jessica Mazonet, and myself. And it was published in Frontiers for Young Minds. So it's a book collection that was actually reviewed and written for kids and reviewed by kids.
Roland, what about you? What publications you would like to highlight today for our audience?
With respect to this year's EARLI conference theme, I would like to highlight an older paper that was published already in 2020 in Perspectives on Psychological Science. And in this paper, we present the so-called Talent Development in Achievement Domains framework, the so-called TAD framework, which is the result of a collaboration with 10 wonderful colleagues from different fields of psychological research. We tried to build up a framework model to focus on measurable psychological constructs at different stages in talent development. And we also highlight that talent development needs to be viewed in a domain-specific way, because talent development is different, for example, in music compared to mathematics.
It seems like you are involved in quite a lot of things. So that kind of is how our next question kind of arises. Like, if you can tell us a bit about or give tips about like work-life balance. Maybe Stephan, you want to start?
Yeah, difficult question, especially for a parent who has 2 young children at home. You know, work-life balance is simply not there at the moment, I would say. It's just navigating sort of the daily challenges and simply surviving, you know, in it. But obviously, thinking back also in terms of early career, it really simply boils down that you have to find sort of your own path. But I think obviously for younger research, it is important to be productive, to establish sort of a publication-based career. That's like how academia works. And I think one tip that I would give within that setting is that it's just important to be conscious and explicit maybe about your physical and mental limitations, how much work hours I actually can put in, how much sleep do I need in order to feel good and be productive at the same time. And I think that also links to setting up specific and realistic goals for yourself.
Setting realistic goals is what I especially get from this. Is this the same for you, Roland, or is it a bit different?
I think one aspect could also be that in science, is, at least from my experience, creativity plays an important role. And as we all know, creative ideas don't come typically at your work desk. They come mainly in your private life when you're going for a walk, when you're doing sports, when you're sitting in a bar, whatever. And therefore, you cannot easily make this distinction between work and life, because being a scientist means that you are immersed into that topics that you're thinking about all the time. And it's still important to save some time and to leave some capacity, of course, for other things that are important for you.
We're very lucky to have here the conference presidents for this year's EARLI conference. And the theme is realizing potentials through education, shaping the minds and brains for the future. So I just wondered, are you hoping that the EARLI conference will shape future research?
The term realizing potentials, that resonates, of course, with our focus on talent development. And I think that's a very important topic, because there is a broad consensus that every child has the right to an education that supports the full development of their talents. Mm-hmm. It seems that talent development does not yet receive the scholarly and professional attention it deserves. Talent development is kind of, in my view, an intrinsic part of instruction in school. And therefore, we try, with this theme, to stimulate interdisciplinary discussions on this topic. And the other terms that are involved in the theme is future and education. And this aligns with our local initiative of the University of Graz called Future Education. Mm-hmm. And in this initiative that was established actually 2 years ago, the university tries to promote this research-based innovation in education.
But I think we also would like to highlight sort of this theoretical framework of neuroconstructivism, right? So that our mind and brain is malleable. It is shaped through sort of a continuous interaction with the environment, that sort of neural structures build the foundation also for building mental representations in the mind, and that this is sort of an experience-dependent aspect that arises over development. And that in this interaction, education plays a huge and significant and fundamental role. We will also have 2 keynote speakers who bring sort of this neuroscientific perspective.
Thanks. So there's obviously lots of interest at the conference, and hopefully it will maybe change some people's minds in terms of what's possible for young people's brains and their talent to be developed. I know Cris is already registered for the conference, and I'm also hoping to attend. So we'll maybe bump into you there.
Excellent. Yeah, would be very happy to see you all 3 at the conference. That would be obviously fantastic. And thanks for giving us the chance, to present us and our work and friends here.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
I got even more sad that I cannot attend because it's 0 at the same time. And I wish you a good conference, and thank you very much for attending today. It was really a pleasure having you.
Nice meeting you. We'll see you at the conference.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
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 Listeners, make sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and stay tuned for the exciting episodes we have coming your way. See you next time on the Early Research Stories podcast.